My name is David.
And my name is Jason.
And this is Discern Realities, a Dungeon World podcast. Our first segment is what happened here recently. Jason, I understand that you've been running a game in a new setting?
Yeah, I've actually been running World of Dungeons in an OSR setting called, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, Yoon-suin. So I'm playing World of Dungeons. World of Dungeons is John Harper's very stripped down kind of retro version of Dungeon World, right? That was part of the original Dungeon World Kickstarter. But let's talk about the setting first. So Yoon-suin is really cool. It's by David McGrogan. It's an OSR fantasy setting that definitely takes some inspirations from Chinese and Indian history and mythology. Or at least it has that kind of vibe to me as I read it. Basically, the book is divided up between like different regions on this continent called Yoon-suin, the Purple Land. And every section of the book has like information for each of those continents. Each section contains tables. It contains like charts of like names of characters that you can use, like all sorts of different things like that. It has some general tables and stuff too, like for monsters and things like that. The book is really, really enjoyable. It's been a really enjoyable book to read in the sense that, you know, the author takes care to like really to use very evocative language and to make sure that he's painting a picture really well for you. So like the monsters, all the monster entries, there are no pictures, but he does such a good job describing each of them that you get this really, really nice, like vivid idea in your mind of like what the monster looks like, right? Really great use of language, like a very like really consistent use of language, which is really important to me. That's something I harp on a lot. Like on the tables of names, like for the different like cities and regions and whatnot, the names are very consistent. Like they feel like part of a cohesive whole, right? Just stuff like that. It's a really, really well thought out setting. We are playing in the Yellow City, which is like one of the first areas of Yoon-suin that's kind of detailed in the book. It's like this really big, like overgrown urban sprawl sort of situation. It's highly, highly socially stratified. So at the very top, you have this race of creatures called the Slugmen, and they're very decadent and like just elitist, right? And they are actually like slugs. they're like bipedal slugs. They created the Yellow City. They're the only people allowed to own property, that sort of thing. In the middle tier, you have all the humans, and then at the very bottom of society in the Yellow City are these crabmen, which are used as basically like slave labor. But what's really neat is there are a lot of hints in the text that the crabmen are actually this very wise, intelligent race that they have their own like art and culture. It's just that the humans and slugmen don't really understand them, right? And so they oppress them. Anyway, the setting is really cool. We've been having tons of fun with it. Some of the things that have really stuck out to me about these, we've done 3 of 4 sessions now. Some of the things that have really stuck out to me about these sessions are we're getting a tremendous amount of depth out of our play, despite the fact that World of Dungeons is kind of a shallow rule set.
Yeah, I was gonna ask why World of Dungeons.
Well, that's a great question, actually. I'm glad you asked that. The reason why I'm doing it in World of Dungeons is because I'm trying to minimize how much I convert, okay? If I were going to run it in Dungeon World, I'd have to do a lot more heavy conversion, and my goal in using World of Dungeons is to try to run the setting just straight out of the book if I can.
Okay. What's it written for? Is it just agnostic or for some specific system?
I think it assumes you're playing like one of the basic D&D games, like a retro clone.
A D20 system.
Yeah, World of Dungeons, it actually turns out to be a pretty good substitute for basic D&D, and I have not had to do much fiddling with the rules. Like, I've been able to kind of use the monsters straight out of the book as they are written, right? Like in terms of like their hit points and stuff and how much damage they do. So that's all worked out pretty well. World of Dungeons is actually a pretty like shallow rule set. It doesn't have any like social mechanics. It doesn't have anything like bonds or anything like that. There's only a single move that you use. It's basically like Defy Danger. It's the only move in the game, that sort of thing. But we've managed to get a lot of really interesting, deep play out of it. First of all, just from a sort of setting standpoint or a thematic standpoint, we've expressed an interest in sort of exploring the like extreme social stratification of the Yellow City, and we're hitting a lot of those themes in our story, and that's been really great. That doesn't have anything to do with World of Dungeons. We're kind of angling for that sort of play, and so it's helping us kind of achieve those goals because we're really talking about it before and after the session. We've also added flags, which is something we do in Dungeon World, right? But we've added flags in Session 2 and Session 3 because in Session 1, we kind of felt like the characters didn't have much connections to each other. They felt a little like detached from one another, and that would have been okay if we were doing kind of just a straight dungeon crawl, but because we were kind of in a more urban sort of like social interaction kind of setting, we talked about it and we decided that we would just do flags from Dungeon World, and just the addition of flags makes World of Dungeons like a much more interesting and complex game. So that part of it's all going really, really well.
Okay, so are your players assumed to be from this place, or are they visitors?
No, they're all from there. One thing I wanted to talk about real quick before we leave this segment is a mechanical thing with World of Dungeons. So World of Dungeons has this mechanic called the Die of Fate, and the way it works is whenever the characters enter into a new space or a new encounter or something like that, the GM can roll a single die to sort of figure out like what the level of complication or risk or danger or reward is going to be. And so, for example, if I roll the die and it's a 6, it means it's going to be a fairly straightforward encounter, or maybe there's like a really fabulous treasure that can be gained with little cost, right? On the opposite end of the spectrum, if I roll that and it's a 1, it means it's going to be a really, really hard, tough, dangerous thing for the characters. I really, really love this aspect of World of Dungeons, and I've had a chance to explore it more because we're doing multiple sessions. This is the first time I've played World of Dungeons in more than one session. I love it because I roll that Die of Fate a lot. I roll it publicly so the players can see what's about to happen. And so it's this really great way of creating some tension because now they're kind of like used to like waiting to see what the result is to find out like how hard or profitable something is going to be. It gives me permission as the GM to go a little harder or softer in a scene, depending on how the die goes, and in kind of interpreting the die result. It's a fun, interesting challenge, and I quite like it. I've started to use it in ways that have implications for more than just like the life-threatening sort of danger aspects of the adventure, and have been kind of using it to create sort of like emotional difficulty in encounters. It's just all around great sessions.
Sounds like a good game.
Yeah, it's going great. We got one more session. I can't wait to see how it wraps up.
Awesome. Anything else you wanted to say about it?
No, I'm good.
Let's move on to our next segment. Our next segment is What Should I Be on the Lookout For?
An individual named Colin Kieran's reached out to me, to us, I should say, on our common email, and he brought to my attention this project that he's been engaged in for a while, Vin Moves, the website's called Vindexus, so I think that's what the Vin Moves means. Anyway, here's what it is. He has created all of these moves that are very evocative and very mechanically interesting, I think, but that you can use as a GM to apply, to give to like a really significant enemy or foe in your campaign. Okay. So you think of when your enemy that you want to use the move for, you find a move that fits them thematically. He recommends that you familiarize yourself with the move's trigger so that you can increase the chances it will see play. He's got a whole like little recommendation for like how to use these. It's pretty cool. It's just a bunch of moves. He has an accompanying blog that goes with it where he describes like the thinking that went into the move and like how best to use the move. And I really like it. I've been spending a fair amount of time on this website. It's pretty cool. I've been homebrewing and making my own custom moves for ages, right? And I occasionally talk about them here on the show. But, they're kind of like meant just for me ultimately, right? Like in my campaign. The ones I share on the show are the ones I think that have the most like universal applicability. I like that he's making these moves like with an eye for like, these are really evocative and cool, but you can kind of use them for how it's going to work for you. Like you can use them for an enemy that needs a little bit of flash or flare. It's pretty cool. And I have just one of the sample moves here. It's
a really cool system and a really cool idea. I'm not sure exactly how many he's got on there at this time, but what he's got on there are pretty good. And they kind of turn your boss fight into a set piece
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it's kind of like helps create like this set piece thing. I was going through it and I'm like, oh man, I could do so much with this. Like, this is really cool. Do you want to read the sample we have here?
Yeah. Oh, Face of Your Father. It's really classic kind of idea. When you are about to deal the killing blow to this enemy, it casts an illusion and takes on the form of someone you love. Name the person and describe the relationship you have with them. This illusion persists into death, but is dispelled if the enemy attacks. If you completely fall for the illusion, mark XP and act accordingly. That's real cool. That's the first part of the move. You can just take it.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah.
If you see through the illusion and deal the killing blow to your loved one, describe how you end them and roll plus wisdom. On a 10+, you know it was only an illusion, but you are troubled by the image and take -1 ongoing until you can rest. On a 7 and 9, the same, but your dreams are plagued by nightmares of what you did. You won't be able to get any sleep the next time you try to rest. And on a 6-, the same, in addition to what the GM says.
This is a really great move. Like, it's constructed well, it's concise, it's super interesting from a mechanical standpoint. The award of XP, that reminds me a lot of my my own little like custom mind control magic move that we talked about a few weeks ago, or a few sessions ago, or a few episodes ago.
Yeah.
This is great, and this website's filled with cool stuff like that. I think we'll include a link on the show notes to it.
Yeah. What I love about this move is like it really shows you how no one walks away unscathed from combat with something this powerful. Even on a 10+, it's harrowing, and you're taking a -1.
Really neat thing. I think people should go check this website out.
Absolutely. Let's move on to our next segment. Our next segment is What Here Is Not What It Appears to Be. Jason, this week I wanted to talk about something that one of our listeners brought up on G+, Greg Batard, I believe that's how you say his name. He asked how we roll out magic items in campaign. Specifically, like, how do you let your characters know how to use them?
Yeah, he was following up on episode 30 when we talked about that menagerie of minor magic items. He was wondering, like, well, how is the best way to, like, reveal to the party, like, what the magic item does? And I think I don't know what your answer is going to be, but my answer is going to be the very, very unsatisfying. It depends on what's going on in the fiction. Well, so what are your thoughts?
Okay, so I kind of try to jot down some of my conditions for how I roll out, because I have the same answer. It depends. I always make them spout lore for it if it is a single-use item and random, like you've got one that's like chain lightning in a bottle. Like, I always make people spout lore for that one, because I don't want to give them that one for free. I kind of want them to risk opening it up and trying to swallow it.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah, that's the one where you open it up and the chain lightning flies out and hits multiple targets, possibly yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah, if it's a single-use item, I pretty much always make them spout for it.
I do a similar thing for almost every item, except I would add like a slight caveat to that, and I'm sure this is what you mean too. To me, it depends a little bit on how they approach the item. Like, if they're kind of like just examining it, trying to find like the button or whatever, the metaphorical button, I usually make that a DR, but spout lore is usually what it ends up being, because they kind of describe it as like, do I recognize something like this or whatever. Sometimes
I'll tell them, just straight up tell them exactly what the magic is, or at least part of it, if it's super relevant to the current situation. I would only do that if it's like super, super obvious, like everyone knows what this thing is. Like, I'll just give it to them, like, yeah, that's what this is.
Right. Okay.
This is the magical sword that'll kill the dragon or whatever. Like,
right,
yeah, that's clearly what this is. I'm not going to make you spout lore for that.
Right. Yeah.
And then oftentimes, if they haven't figured out what it is by the end of the session, and I want to see it get action, like the ebony cat, I love that thing. I'll just tell them at the end of the session what it does. I may not tell them everything about what it does, but I'll tell them some stuff.
Yeah, that's basically my thinking on it too. I would say 90% of the time it's either a DR or a spout lore for me, especially if it's something that, like, if they're in the middle of the dungeon and they think it's something they might want to use, like, they suspect there's something there helpful for them or something they might be able to get some use out of. I'll usually make it a DR or a spout lore, because they're in kind of like heightened circumstances and there's a lot of chance for trouble, right? So I think the role is, especially if they describe themselves doing in the fiction, then, the move triggers most of the time for me. Yeah, I agree with you. I'll tell them what it is in the middle of the dungeon if there has been a significant fictional build up to it. Okay, so for example, if they know about a legend surrounding this sword that's meant to kill the dragon, and that's something we've discussed in the fiction, or that's something that's come up, once they find that sword, I don't have much of an interest, in keeping that information from them, right? Like, so I'll definitely, it's like, okay, yeah, based off what's been happening, this is super obvious. So yeah, I'm agreeing with you on that. At the end of the session, yeah, so I'll tell them then, I don't actually tell them at the end of the session. I tell them at the next session, as if their characters researched it during the off time.
Oh.
I leave them hanging. But yeah, it's the same idea though. Like, if the characters are going to take some time off and they would have time to go seek, wise counsel on what this thing might be, I just tell them the answer. There's no reason to go to rolls at that point. So yeah, I mean, I think that's probably how most people would handle the situation.
Yeah, another part of this is if they attempt to spout lore on something and they figure out half of it, I'll also probably tell them the other half at the end of the session. I think that's a great move. I mean, at a certain point, I'm always looking at it. I'm always thinking about it in terms of where's the fictional tension here? If it's no longer like fictionally interesting that they don't know what the thing does, I don't see the reason not to tell them. Yeah. But that's all I really had to say about spouting lore on sweet, sweet loot that you can get at the menagerie of magical items. Let's move on to our next segment. Our next segment is What Here is Useful or Valuable to Me?
All right. So our Codex Keeper contest is complete, and we are going to announce the runners-up and the winner. I wanted to just a quick sort of overview or summary of how the contest went. This was an interesting contest because it was the most prescribed in terms of like what kinds of things you could submit, right? Like, it had a really, really narrow focus. The outcomes were really interesting. We didn't get very many submissions. Like, the number of submissions was quite low, especially compared to the other contests. I think that was a feature or a function of the fact that it had such a tight focus. Like, you had to create an item or a move or whatever based off this image, right? Also, I think there was a little bit of, I think it was just challenging. What do you think? Like, was it just a hard contest?
Oh, I mean, yeah, sure. It's harder than our other contests, but I think that really brought out the best in the people who chose to participate, because every single one of these is gold.
They're fucking great. Yeah. Like, there weren't very many submissions, but like, you're right. Every fucking one of them is so good. Like, I want to, like, they should all be in Codex, right? Like, they're really good. And so it made picking the runners up and winner actually very, very hard. Just to kind of emphasize more how cool a lot of the entries were. We got compendium classes. We got some very, very elaborate custom moves. We got some set pieces. It was neat. People were like playing with symbolism. They were really, really going in on this contest, the people who chose to participate. So very fucking cool. Let's announce the runners up. So do you want to do your runner up first?
Yeah. So my runner up is from listener Derek Grimm, and it's a really cool fancy move that like kind of changes your end of session play. It's called the Spring of Rulers, and I gotta say, like, he sent this to us in like a crazy locked down format because it's like it's nice. really well like formatted. Yeah, it looks very professional.
It wasn't enough to win though, Derek. Sorry about it. I can tease him because we're friends, but yeah.
Jeez, I thought you were just calling some stranger out.
No, it's Derek from Houston Gauntlet.
Oh, this is Derek.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. So it's called the Spring of Rulers, and basically what happens is the image of the Codex Keeper is this ritual that happens, and if you perform this ritual, then you'll become noticed by one of two gods, either the god of war or the god of harmony, and whichever one you choose to pursue that path, you can end up getting a hold at the end of session, after you do the marking XP moves. You can answer the question of did you pursue war or did you pursue harmony, and you can gain or lose hold depending on your answers. And then once you get a number of hold, you get blessed, and can get +1 ongoing for actions. It's super powerful, but it takes a lot of build up, and you gotta like really commit to it. So it's pretty sweet. I really liked it.
Yeah, it's cool. We're going to have the full text of the move on the website for this episode. Go check it out because there's a lot of like, it's a pretty lengthy move and there's a lot of detail. We're not going to go into it right now, but it's super fucking cool. It was in my top, it was definitely one of my top choices too.
Yeah. Who's your runner-up?
My runner-up is Judd Carlman, who actually runs a very, very good blog called the Githyanki Diaspora. His move is really cool. It's called Blood Pond. I'm not in love with that name, if I'm being honest, because I don't think it lives up to what it does. But here's how the move goes, though. When you step into the blood pond while holding a symbol of life and a symbol of death, the symbol of life becomes a living construct and asks you permission to wield the symbol of death. If you hand the symbol to it, it will come to life. Roll +X, where X is every time you have visited the Black Gate and returned, and or how many times you have given birth. I love that. If you do not hand the construct the symbol of death, it will shriek hateful noises and words at you, dissolving into the blood pond. After the roll, on a 10+, you hold 3. On a 7 to 9, hold 1. On a miss, the construct will attempt to kill you and hold your heart and skull as symbols of life and death in order to begin creating its own army of constructs. I love that. Here's what you can spend your holds on. The construct is not immediately thirsty for blood. Choose a move that the construct has inherited from you. The construct will live longer than 1 moon cycle before dissolving into blood and regret. The construct does not resent you yet. That's good. The construct has a move it will teach you before it dies. This is so good. This is really great and quite emblematic of the level of submissions we got. There were several that kind of were all about like creating a thing, creating a construct, and this was one of my favorites. So yeah, that's Judd's is my runner-up.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good move. So that just leaves our winner.
Our winner is, the move is called, I'm going to pronounce it very badly, but I'll give it a shot. The Anita Onequencha Pact. The Anita Onequencha Pact by Andy Katz. Like
you said, we had moves that were about creating creatures, and this is another one, and this one is beautiful.
Yeah, this was my hands down favorite of the contest.
Yeah, this is the first time we both agreed this one's the winner.
Yeah, we both agreed on our favorite ones this time. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the move. As is known to all, living things with red blood in their veins only come to be on worlds with a moon, and that those beings with the sacred power to bear offspring are bound deeply to this life-giving force. In exchange for a few children over a lifetime, the bodies of the bearers offer to the moon their lifeblood each moon cycle. What is known only to a few is the way that one may invoke the terrible power of the pact and exchange all of one's future children to summon and bind a child of the moon. When you sit upon the altar and offer your womb to the full moon according to the occult customs of your people, a torrent of blood pours forth from the altar's cleft, and out of the blood-soaked ground is born a child of the moon. The GM will describe its otherworldly presence, and then you roll +con. On a 10+, choose 2. On a 7 to 9, choose 1 and reduce your constitution by 1 permanently. And here's what you can choose from. Your control over the child is absolute. If this is not chosen, the child will heed you at times but may rebel willfully as children are wont to do. The child is clever. Choose a level 1 spell from the wizard playbook. You may ask the child to cast this spell once per day. The child is vicious. Treat the child as an animal companion with ferocity 3, cunning 0, armor 1, instinct 0. Follow the animal companion creation guideline on page 131 of the Dungeon World Rulebook. The child is kind. Choose a level 1 spell from the cleric spellbook. You may ask the child to cast this spell once per day.
This is so good. I love it. It's evocative. It has like an ongoing fictional element. Like this child is kind of with you now, you know. It's pretty gruesome in terms of like, you know, creating the child. It's dangerous. Like reducing your constitution by 1 is dangerous. It's great. This is a really terrific evocative move. Congratulations to Andy.
Yeah, absolutely. The preamble up to the move is like poetic, and what it's describing is very symbolic, and it plays nicely into the move, and it's like that's the first thing that I thought of when I saw that picture, like some scenario like this.
Yeah, it's really awesome. He did a great job.
That's the winner. Thank you for everyone who participated and submitted. We love all of them, and it was a tough close call, definitely. Let's go ahead and move on to our next segment. Our next segment is What is About to Happen.
This is our ongoing comic strip AP featuring the adventures of Ramshackle Crow. And when we last saw you, Ramshackle, you had located the entrance into a subplane called, colloquially, the plane of burning vaults, or the hell of burning vaults, right? And I think I'm going to kind of fast forward and summarize a little bit to get us to the action here, but I think that, you and Scabs are wandering down a narrow alleyway, keeping your eyes open for that very distinctive but subtle shimmer that indicates that Dis has reached into another plane and is beginning to access and possibly devour it. And in a very, very narrow side alley, so narrow that you have to enter it sideways. You have to turn and kind of crab walk into it, right?
Right. You have to turn left, but not left relative to anything. Just perfectly left.
Nice. It appears that little narrow alleyway leads to just the end of the street, but as soon as you go in, you and Scabs find yourselves in this, maybe like the length of a football field, just a big, long, black field of sorts, like a big, long tract of black earth, okay? And the sky is sort of ruddy, and there doesn't seem to be anything else around except at the very end of this expanse of earth, of land, there is a large iron building. Just looks like a big, large iron square building. And Scabs, you can see him kind of scratching and fidgeting at his wrist at one of his little abrasions that appear on his body often. Especially when he gets nervous, he begins to kind of scratch him a little bit. And he says, "Well, this must be the place, Ramshackle. Looks like we found it."
Yep, we are ready to jump in. Yeah, you ready?
Yeah, I got my tools. I got everything. I'm ready to go. God, it's hot in here. Can you feel that heat?
Well, they don't call them hell vaults for no reason.
He's like, that heat. I recognize that heat. The hell of burning vaults, my ass. This feels like Gehenna.
Oh, a what?
Gehenna. Gehenna.
Gehenna. What?
It's one of the outer planes of existence. Gehenna. Just never mind. Let's just go.
All right. So, kind of look at him funny. I'm not sure which plane he's talking about. I haven't heard of a Gehenna before. But he knows way more about these planes than I do. So maybe he just thought that he told me about this one and didn't. Yeah. Go ahead and anchor on and get ready to hop in.
This expanse of black terrain. There's literally nothing else around. You can if you look to the left and the right, you can see the land sort of crumbles off, almost like you're on a flat asteroid or something, right? There's just ruddy atmosphere all around you after that, right? But it's a fair walk directly to this large iron building construct. What are you doing as you approach?
Yeah, so you said there's it's just barren. There's nothing to help us get closer by hiding behind it and moving forward. So we just bring different colored cloth with us because planes of existence can be all kinds of strange colors, and we will drape ourselves in whatever color the surrounding terrain is to try and avoid otherworldly eyes.
Sure. That seems like a good plan. Yeah, I'm into that. And so, are you keeping your eyes open for anything particular as you approach, or are you just kind of slowly creeping your way up to it?
You know, the thing about running from one plane to another is, like, you gotta have eyes in the back of your head to be prepared for what could be out there. We're on one planet one plane of existence where you had to think sideways to avoid the attracting the monsters that were there. So, it's just looking down, looking up, looking around, listening very carefully for anything moving that's not you. But yeah, keeping your eyes up is usually a good thing, because hopefully you can hear anything else that might be trying to approach you, and then watching where you put your feet.
Yeah, give me a discern realities roll.
Hey, there we go.
So you got a 10 plus?
Yeah.
You can hold on to your questions and ask them as you wish. So just interrupt me and let me know if you want to spend one.
Yeah, it sounds like what I'm doing right now is trying to figure out what I should be on the lookout for.
It's very, very quiet. You don't see any kind of, like, astral insects or anything like that crawling around on the rocks or on the ground. It feels very, very empty, and actually not incredibly large either. You get the sense that just beyond this, like, tract of land, this, like, that's kind of floating out in space, that there's not much more beyond it. Like, it's like just a little bubble almost, right? It's probably fairly safe until you get to the actual vault itself.
Okay, that's good. So I'm, like, talking to scabs about that, which we usually don't do. Like, usually we wait and make sure that there's nothing around before we make any noise. But I'm so convinced that there's nothing around. I'm like, scabs, does this seem a little more dead than usual to you?
He's like, maybe, yeah, perhaps, but it's just a small pocket dimension. There's not much to it. I'm worried about what we're going to find inside the vault. Makes me think that whoever is storing whatever they're storing inside that vault, they're sure of their defenses enough to not need any out here.
Maybe so. Maybe hopefully they just relied on no one ever finding the place. And I kind of rub my arm where the tattoo is, thinking about what could be inside.
He's like, I've got a feeling we're not going to be that lucky.
Well, yeah. I never relied on luck. Not since that mirrored serpent. Ugh.
I think he's heard you mention that before. But
probably. We've been together for
100 years.
100 years, yeah.
But I think he's never actually asked you for the specific details of that story. I think he thinks it's just like a thing you say sometimes.
I think I was just like kind of bat it off. I'm like, oh, that was an expression where I came from.
Right, yeah. As you get, like, closer and closer to this large iron building, you begin to realize that, like, it's getting much, much bigger, and you're actually quite small compared. Like, it's a really, really huge, towering iron building, right? No apparent windows. I would say it's easily 5 stories tall. Okay. And do you want to spend another question?
Yeah. What here is useful or valuable to me?
There's a door. Helpfully, there is a door right square in the middle of the wall that you're approaching. It sticks out because it's not made of iron like the rest of the building. It appears to be made of sort of multiple planes of mirrored glass, kind of like fit together in a strange, ornate geometric pattern.
And it's not like a vault door?
Do you want to approach it, get a little closer and see?
Yeah. We'll get a bit closer and see if it's a kind of door we're looking at besides weird.
As you get a little closer, I would say now you're probably within 40 or 50 paces of it. You see like a slight shimmer, and you realize now that hanging in the air, turned at like a perfect angle so that you would like look right past them, there are actually like a number of mirrors floating in the air, probably about a dozen, okay, floating at different heights and different sizes. And they turn and they kind of reflect the sort of ambient red light of this pocket dimension. And so kind of all around you, these mirrors are sort of floating as you approach the door.
Okay, so the door is not the mirrors. The mirrors are floating.
They're separate from the door, which is itself made of mirrored glass.
Oh, I see. Huh. Okay. What is about to happen?
You will notice as you make your way through these mirrors that are kind of floating all around you now, you'll notice that images begin to appear. Images of men, women, many of them planar, entities or planar beings, like, kind of like the residents of Dis, right? Like various creatures, species, that sort of thing. They appear to be like pressing up against the mirror glass as if the mirror were a wall. And they're kind of like trying to get your attention, but their mouths make no sound. And it seems that maybe they got trapped.
Yeah. I look at Scabs, and I think his orange skin as he's noticed this too is probably like a little bit lighter, a little bit more peach.
Yeah, he's lost a little bit of his color. Well, that doesn't look very good, does it?
Yeah, this kind of looks like the kind of door we might not want to touch. What do you think? How should we go about this?
I mean, we've disarmed the traps on hundreds of trapdoors over the years. Why should this be any different?
Well, I've never seen one that puts you in what looks like a mirror, and I get really close to one, and I'm like, I guess the guy's probably trying to get my attention, looking out of it, acknowledging him, like, and I'm like pointing at the door, and I'm like pointing at him, seeing like if he reacts.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I think you're on the right track here.
Yeah. I tell Scabs, all right, well, let's try something a little different. Just get back. Go get around the corner here. And we both kind of like scramble kind of a little distance from the door. And I'm getting ready to like pick up a rock off the ground and like heave it at the door.
Let's leave it there.
All right, sounds good. That just leaves one final question. Who's really in control here?
Discern Realities is a production of The Gauntlet. Our website is www.gauntlet-rpg.com. On that website, you can find links to our G+ community, our other podcasts, and our various meetups, including Gauntlet Hangouts, our online meetup. And we're on Twitter at GauntletRPG.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, listeners. That's our show.
What are you grinning about?
Oh, I was looking at a message from a friend about this stupid thing we were laughing about at law school. We said we should make a themed strip club called Nudum Pactum.
Called what?
Nudum Pactum, the bear offer.
Oh,
from contracts.
Yeah.
Whenever you come in, you have to scream, "I accept."
Oh God, law jokes. Stop. Okay.
This is my life right now. Okay.
Yeah, it's very tragic. So we had like softball teams or whatever, in law school. Yeah. And our team was called Summary Judgment.
Oh my God. No.
Yeah.